Hello everyone, my name is Dan and I'm a flight instructor for a company called FTA Global based in the south of the UK. As a flight instructor, it's my job to train you to become a professional pilot. So what's involved with training to be a pilot now? Well, there's two different parts to consider. You have practical flight training and what we call ground or theoretical training. Your practical flight training is the most fun. It's where you learn about how an aircraft flies, how you manipulate the controls to get the plane to go where you want it to, and your ground-based training is learning all of the science and the physics of flying. So what are some of the ground-based subjects that you learn about and we teach you? Well, you have things like meteorology, so how is the weather going to affect your planned flight and what problems might that cause you? Things like mass and balance and mathematics of flying. How does the distribution of weight in an aircraft change how it's going to fly? And is it safe or is it unsafe loading a plane in a particular way? And more importantly, on a day-to-day basis, the general physics of flying. Aircraft fly by general principles using Newtonian physics that I'm sure you're already familiar with. It's all about forces and balancing different forces. And we'll have a look specifically now as to how changing those forces affects your flying profile. So here we have an aircraft flying what we would term straight and level. That means flying in a constant direction and at a constant level altitude above the ground. Now notice here you can see outside the plane and you can see very clearly the horizon, so where the sea and the ground are in front of you. Now as a pilot, it's our job to take you from A to B, but we obviously want to avoid the ground as much as possible until we're taking off and landing. So being able to see your position in relation to the ground at all times is really important. Now to supplement what you can see outside, pilots use a selection of what they call instruments, which is information that the aircraft gives you inside. So note, for example, we have two great big computer screens in front of us in this aircraft, followed by some round traditional or conventional instruments that are giving the pilot information on airspeed, altitude, and where the horizon is in relation to the aircraft. Now we talked a little bit about the physics of flight, and to give you a background of this, when the aircraft is flying straight and level, there are four fundamental forces which are all in a state of equilibrium, which we won't go into too much detail with, but something you can have a look at in your own time. If you change the magnitude of one of these forces, you change how the aircraft is flying. Note, for example, if we deflect what we call the control column back towards the pilot, see what happens towards the horizon. The horizon moves down the windscreen and the aircraft nose, we would say, is pitching up. In this state, the aircraft is gaining altitude and reducing airspeed. Note what happens if we do the opposite and we apply a forward pitch on the control column. The aircraft nose is lowering, the horizon is moving up the windscreen, and the aircraft would now be descending and speeding up. Think about going down a hill on a bike. If you're descending, you'd start to speed up, and if you were going uphill, you'd start to slow down. The physics is the same. As well as moving forwards and backwards, we can rotate the control stick one way or the other, which deflects the aircraft to turn in one particular direction. Here, the aircraft is established in a gentle turn to the left. Now, when the pilot can see the ground, it's very easy to see what the aircraft is doing as we manipulate that control column. But what do you think would happen if the aircraft was to fly into cloud and we can no longer see the horizon? Here we have the same situation. The aircraft is currently flying straight and level, but if we now manipulate the control column, it's very difficult to see what's going on outside, but notice the instruments inside are telling the pilot that something's happening. Can you see what's happening? Here, the aircraft is pitching up, gaining height and slowing down. Did you guess correctly? Pilots are constantly using the data outside the aircraft, so what they can see, as well as the data inside the aircraft, to get a mental map of where the aircraft is in relation to where it should be. And this is a really important skill that we use day to day, and one of the first things you're taught to understand. What do you think the aircraft's doing now? Here, the aircraft is pitching up again, gaining height, slowing down, but also turning to the left. So there's a bit of an introduction for you as to how we use some of the instrumentation and how the aircraft flies when we manipulate the controls. These are things that you learn about in far more detail if you start a course of pilot training. What are some of the best things that I've seen as a flight instructor? Well, by far the views are some of the greatest you can ever see. I have to pinch myself almost every day seeing some of the most beautiful sunsets, but also things like the experience of the student once they achieve their course, obtain their qualification at the end, and have their first solo flying without an instructor. It's really rewarding to see them come back from their first flights where they've flown the aircraft by themselves. It's a huge achievement. If you'd like to know more information about becoming a professional pilot and training with FTA, please log on to our website, have a look, or feel free to ask your STEM representative any questions.
I used to dream I'd be up there one day. Till one day became day one. I doubted at first, just tried to blend into the crowd. But then I stopped dreaming and started reaching. Because when you let your hard work do the talking, the results speak for themselves. And you realise there's a place up there for all of us.